Hi guys, how are you doing? Today I'm going to be talking about 5 things I've learned from earning 60k royalties on KDP, but in just one niche. And I hope you find this video useful and I hope you enjoy it. So here I am on my blog, and I will link to this blog post in the description if you'd rather read that, or you can read it at a later date. But I was looking at my royalties, which have come to around $97,000 now since I started in October 2019. And I noticed that my best selling book has actually made over $30,000 at this point. But when I was looking deeper, I realized that by adding things up, actually, I made around 60 plus thousand in one main niche, which is a collection of sub niches, you could say, overall. So it's not just sort of one keyword or something. So just to note that all the above sales numbers, as far as royalties, are not all profit. I do pay for some tools, which I link to in my description. And also, I run ads, but I've only been running ads for around 12 months now. And in total, I've actually only spent $1,300 or so on ads in the US, $1,300 in the UK, and less than $500 in Canada, in Canadian dollars. And then, of course, I do have to pay tax on everything that I earn. So it's just worth taking into account. Of course, I don't take $97,000 home with me. That would be nice, but that's not what happens. So I wanted to talk about 5 things I've learned from earning this money in one main niche. And there are some main things that stuck out to me, so I'll share them with you now. So, number one is that competing against yourself definitely beats competing against other authors. So, if you create several books or a whole bunch of books in the same niche, but which are completely different styles and maybe targeting a completely different subset of the same audience, then you're definitely not just competing against yourself because obviously people are individuals and they have individual tastes. And whereas they might choose one book, they definitely wouldn't choose another because it's completely against their style or taste or whatever. So if you create really unique books which are very different to each other, then there's no problem in creating as many books as you want really in that area, because there's always going to be someone that prefers one thing over another. So you may also get people buying bulk orders of several different books that they like the look of, which are all quite unique and different. And this is why I have to stress that they do need to be unique. You don't want the same interior with just a different cover. Obviously, if people are going to be buying several different books, they expect several different books, not 3 books with a different cover but the same interior. I mean, there are differences when it comes perhaps to planners. Someone may not mind the same interior, but there are various situations in which they're going to want something a bit different and they expect something different because of the style of the cover. So that might just be that the interior is a different style as well, with different fonts and maybe some different images in there. You may also want some different text in there with different quotes, different writing, whatever it may be that you're trying to create. So I'd really would recommend, as I said here, to go deep into a niche that works and explore it until you run out of original ideas, because sooner or later you will run out of ideas or you will just get really bored, at which point it's time to take a break and maybe you can try something else. Another really important factor is if you go onto Amazon, you will often see on your sales page a section that says customers who viewed also viewed, and then there'll be a selection of books. Now, wouldn't it be the best thing if your book was in that selection of books as well? Because that's what you want. This has happened to me many times, and it's really great because obviously, if a customer isn't so keen on your book, after all, they might just go and click on one of your other books, which is also in the list. Another thing that I do is that I do product targeting to my own books. So if you look on the sales page, you will see sponsored sections like this. So products related to this item, and all these are ads. Okay. So what I do is if I create lots of related books, or even in sub niches, then I will do a product ad to one of my main books or several of my main books, so that all of my books that are related to this one hopefully show up in the sponsored ad section here. So if someone decides again, oh, they're not that keen on my book, then they could always go to the sponsored ad section. They see another one of my books and they like that better, so they click that. Now, obviously, this doesn't always work because if you're in a really competitive niche, then you're going to get traditionally published books with a huge ad spend budget, which is just going to be way too difficult for you to compete with. So, I mean, that's just another reason to try and go into a niche that's low or medium competition. Obviously, there is a lot less low competition niches nowadays, but it's still best to go into something that isn't so competitive that you're never going to have a chance. But as you can see, as I mentioned earlier with my ad spend, I don't spend a huge amount on ads whatsoever. And a majority of my sales are organic. So definitely as a beginner, you can start without doing ads. And it's, for me, it's just a kind of boost. I know that perhaps if I was better at ads, or if I, hopefully I will become better at it over time and I'll be able to run more ads. But right now, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. So I've kind of just been floating along with the same amount of ad spend roughly and not really going much further into it. So, yeah, what would you rather? A person leaves your sales page and just clicks on another book, or they click on one of your ads to one of your other books? Because otherwise, they're going to be clicking on someone else's ad and then off they go forever. That's it, your sale is gone. So you want the best possible chance of your books obviously selling. And I think one of those ways is to create a whole bunch of books that hopefully start selling in one area or related area, and being able to have your book, your books on your sales page as well. So the second thing that I've learned is that if you dominate a niche, you can reduce your competition to a certain degree. Now, obviously, this isn't going to happen in a really highly competitive niche. But if you do find a niche that works for you, don't just move on to the next thing. Really try and think of all the different books that you can try and create in that niche. There are also, as well as different areas that you could target within the same niche, there are also different styles that you could target. So, really look at what is out there and look at the different styles available, see what you could do in your own way. Usually you'll find that there's a lot of designs that are very similar. So if you can create something that stands out, and it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing in the world, but it can just be something that's original, then the chances are that's going to appeal to somebody and they're going to buy it. It doesn't always work, of course, but definitely in my case, I think the most success I've had is where there have been gaps in the market and I've just done something that's a little bit different, either to what is already there or something that just isn't there anyway. Start to write down some ideas about what might be missing in an area and maybe what there is too much of. So, a style that you probably don't want to bother with, for example. So often, when I have had success in a niche with a book, I often find that I can create other books and that those also sell. So it's really important to not just kind of create one book and then move on to the next thing. I would always put out a few different ones now to begin with that are all quite different, all targeting a different style, because usually one of them will start selling and others won't. So what I tend to do is then look at that book that has made the sales and try and figure out what it is about that book that's appealing, and then create other unique covers and interiors based on what I've learned. Also, the more of your books that start to generate 5-star reviews and more sales, the more visibility your books end up having on Amazon above your competition. When you're going to go into a niche that you think you're going to go create a lot of books in, it's better to do so where you do have some wiggle room. So it's just not so oversaturated that you're going to have to rely on ads 100% to get your book visible. You want to try and go into an area where you can get organic sales initially. Obviously, the idea there is that you do want to dominate a niche. So you want your books to be everywhere. And because you get into that niche at a good time and you have plenty of reviews and sales and 5-star reviews, hopefully, it's going to be harder for your competition to come in and gain the same visibility that you do on Amazon. Obviously, it doesn't always work out like that because you're not always going to be successful for every book that you do by any stretch. But if you do just target those lower and medium competition niches, you do have much more of a chance of having multiple books in a niche that end up selling. And if you kind of go ahead of the tide, if you like, you can gain that visibility before other people do, and that gives you the advantage overall. So it is possible to somewhat dampen the competition. Of course, you're never going to eliminate it, but having more books out there does help. So the third thing I've learned is to be as diverse as you can in your designs. Of course, the reason why you see the same kind of design again and again and again is because it is a tried and tested formula and lots of people like it. But because people seem to tend to copy the same sort of styles that are doing well all the time, there are often gaps in the market for sure which you can focus on. And if it's a success, you can do really well from doing that. And that might not only just be a gap in the market as such, it might be combining two different styles, combining two different niches within your design, or doing a kind of unique slant on what you can already see. There are so many different ways to approach a niche. There are so many people within a niche that appreciate different types of styles and different types of design and different colors and different themes. So there really is a huge scope out there as far as design goes. And I would urge you to try and be as diverse as you can and as unique as you can. And try things out, experiment. That's the key, I think, in finding success overall. If you think about it, the more that you do experiment and try things, the bigger the chance that you're actually going to hit on something that's really successful. And it's only through that trial and error and just gradual learning over time that you do get to get a knack as well for what works. And you start to see what type of thing may work across multiple different niches, not just one. And that's where I go into the fourth thing I've learned as well, which is that when you do find a style that works, you don't just want to do more of the same, but use the winning design in other niches as well. So what has happened to me various times is that I come across something that works, and rather than just kind of repeating that within the same niche, which obviously would be competing directly against the book that's doing well, I'll use that style but in a different niche altogether. So what I might do is, if I have a certain keyword within a niche that's working, then I may use that same keyword or a variant of it and create a completely unique cover that's quite different to the one that's doing well. Or I might create several of those. So completely unique books, totally different covers. So after I've done that, I will use the winning style that's doing well, but then use that in a completely different niche. It won't be an identical cover, but it will be inspired by that. So sometimes I use a pen name that's just for different styles rather than niches. So it might actually go across several niches, but it's just that I'm using a kind of winning style or a winning formula. So yeah, by creating different designs in one particular niche, you're not wasting your time there because you're really experimenting and finding out what exactly works. And once you've done that initial design, you don't just leave it and forget it. If a design is actually working, then you can take that whole idea and that concept and then use it towards other niches as well. Because you found a winning formula, right? Suddenly this cover is taking off. Now, it might not always work in other niches because obviously sometimes a certain design is completely inappropriate, of course, but there will be times and there will be areas that you can use it in. There's always going to be a way that you can recycle, I guess, a style or niche idea. So the first thing I've learned is that when you do find a success in a particular niche, you don't just want to leave it at that. You actually want to explore that niche on multiple levels as much as you possibly can. So let's say you have a winning niche. Well, if you zoom into that niche, you'll find more sub niches within a broader area. And if you go broader, you'll also find out that there's other niches related that you could go into as well. So I gave an example on my blog where I took teachers as an example. So if you zoom in, you will find different types of teacher: maths, science, geography, etc. But then also you can think of terms of the teacher themselves, such as they may need academic planners and so on, but also someone buying a gift for a teacher, what kind of thing would they be looking for? But then if you zoom out of that whole concept of teaching, then you could perhaps look at a broader section such as education in general or homeschooling. So there are different ways that you can explore a niche, and that might be going further and further in. So you getting to eventually micro niches, or zooming out and seeing a bigger picture, finding other broader topics of area that you could then zoom into again. Just this general idea could really keep you busy, probably forever. You might be wondering how many books you should create within a niche, and there isn't really any answer to that, I don't think. What I would usually do myself is probably aim for a few different books that are very unique as far as the design goes, and will be targeting a different section of that niche audience, or what I think might appeal to them. And then I see what happens. So nowadays, I do run ads to new books quite often. If I do get good results, then I will often stick with that anyway. If I don't, then I'll improve the cover and try again. But usually, what happens is one or more of the books will start to get those sales if the ads are successful as well. From there, I can gauge where to go, whether I should be creating more books, if I need to improve on the ones that I have. When I find a book that does sell in a particular style, I might then create some unique variation. And of course, I'll then use that design, but with a different niche if I can, which is not always possible, but I'll see what happens. And then it also depends how many designs you can come up with, because there's always a point where you just think, oh, I can't do any more in this area, or you just really do get bored of it, and that's normal. Sometimes you just need a break, you need to move on to something else. And I always find that once I've had a break, it really helps as far as ideas go as well, because if you just have that bit of time away, maybe doing something completely different, it will mean that you're more refreshed when you go back into the older niche. And sometimes more ideas will come to you, and sometimes they won't. And that's just the way that it goes. Those are just the main things that came into my mind when I thought about how I'd made that much money in a particular niche. But I want to just as well make sure that the message comes across that I'm not talking about uploading lots of similar books, with a slightly different keyword or a slightly different cover. I'm really talking about creating value in terms of totally different books that could appeal to different parts of that audience. When it comes to creating unique designs, though, I understand that if you're not a designer, that's going to be a real struggle for you. And that's why in previous videos, I've always suggested that you really want to learn basic fundamentals of design, and ideally some kind of design program. Because I wasn't a designer at all, I learned Canva, and that's something that I've learned gradually over years. But you might be more comfortable with various other programs such as Affinity Design or Publisher or Photoshop and so on. But I really do think that you do need to learn the basics of design and just get better over time as far as that goes. I think even if you are quite interested in creating designs and you have that creative type of personality, there's still a point where even doing something like KDP can become a trial. Trying to continue to come up with new ideas and put new books out, it can be quite challenging anyway. So it's best that you at least have some interest in creating and designing books, because if you have zero interest in it, it's just going to become really old very quick. Just to let you know, I also do have a free mini course. I will leave a link below in the description so you can get that. It's for beginners and will show you how to get started with KDP. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. That's it for today. Do let me know in the comments if you've created multiple books in the niche and whether this has worked for you or whether it hasn't. And thanks for watching.